It's January 2nd, man. We can't... How much can we really expect from ourselves?
Spirits are high. The bar is low. Books. 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 Books.
Hello and welcome to Didn't Read It, the podcast that is definitely not propaganda aimed at children.
Join the United States military. You want insurance, don't you?
You want to buy a house, don't you?
You want a free education, don't you?
You want to succeed, don't you?
Oh, man.
I am your host, Grace Todd, and it is 2025. Woo! Exciting.
Yeah.
With me today to ring in the new year is pal of the pod and talented musician behind our theme song, William Albritton.
Pal of the pod, belle of the ball, talented musician.
All of these things and more.
Briefly president of the United Yugoslav nation.
Oh yeah? When did that happen?
1989.
Ah, you were definitely alive then.
Yep, that's right.
That was an experience that you existed for.
Mm-hmm. I led a short but very bloody revolt, reigned for 1.5 years until I was murdered in my bedroom.
Oh, you were deposed with violence.
Yep, I decided not to die, though.
May we all live long enough to be deposed by violence.
Yeah. That's all we ever want, right? Maslow's hierarchy.
Maslow's hierarchy of
Halfway up is just being murdered in political violence.
deposed. It's Maslow's hierarchy for dictators. It's a whole other
Right.
set
They've got a separate one.
Yeah.
At the top is like a kitty cat femboy, and then like halfway down is like being deposed, and
Where does the kitty cat femboy come in?
that's at the very top
Of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs for dictators?
Yeah.
Okay.
You secure your base, find a common enemy. Kitty cat femboy.
Maslow's hierarchy of needs for fascists. All right. Anyway.
You're so welcome.
Happy 2025. We are barely skating by. William, how are you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. Glad to... Is that above or below it's going?
Hard to say. Maybe slightly below.
Slightly below it's going?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But somewhere above, like a silent 10-yard stare and like a nod.
Yeah, which is still above just like a... You know?
Yeah. We're very into quantifying things today, apparently. Everything is going somewhere on a chart.
Well, I figured the first episode of the year should be just top 10 top 10s.
Okay, sure.
So we're just going to do our top 10 lists.
Top 10 upset white boy responses to how's it going?
Yeah. Top 10 incoming president femboys.
Yeah, uh-huh. Top 10 assassinations of dictators.
Top 10 times I derailed your podcast.
Top 10 times I bought pieces of propaganda aimed at children at used bookstores.
Oh, is that what we're talking about today?
So, I suppose we should get around to the whole point of us being here.
Baby's first dictator.
Today, William, because it is the first episode of the year, and we have some more super serial literature coming down the pipeline, but my scheduling, as always, was a little bit wonky. And a question that I get asked somewhat frequently is like, how do you define classic literature? Right?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the times people seem to think that...
Old.
Yes. It's just like, well, it's an old book, and that means it's a classic book. And I was in a used bookstore over the holidays. Very charming little place. Oh, shit, what was it called?
Where?
It was Salem.
All right, listeners, Grace is distracted. If we act now, we can get her before she goes for the stop recording button. Quick!
Okay, there it is. So over the holidays, as I was meandering through the wilds of Virginia, I stopped in a place called Wondrous Books and More in Salem, Virginia, and impulse bought a stack of random old-ass books. And this one hails from 1942, and it is, in fact, quite old. What it is not is a piece of classic literature. That being said, I thought we could use a bit of a lark, and so today I have brought you a book called Smilin Jack and the Daredevil Girl Pilot.
Propaganda for kids. Let's go. I'm so excited. Is this in the vein of like old pulp shit aimed at young adults?
So this was part of a series of books put out primarily in World War II. They were called the Whitman Authorized Editions. And we will talk a little bit more later about like the Whitman Authorized Editions in a general sense and why I find them interesting. But this one in particular is a novelization of a comic strip that ran from, I think, the 30s as late as the 70s.
Huh.
And I do not know if this was its only...
Smilin Jack goes to Korea. God.
Well, so I do not know if this is the only novelization they did of this comic strip, but it's the only one, I think, in this series. And so it's published in 1942, and it is very much a book meant for children and like maybe young adults, but I think like children primarily. And it is about Smilin Jack, the pilot, and a mission that he undertakes for the United States government.
Amazing.
Uh-huh.
It's super secret and special.
And while Zach Mosley wrote and illustrated the comic, there is no listed author for this book.
Huh.
Which is how you can tell it's quality.
Yep. When there's no one around to take credit for it, that's when you know something's real great.
So the Whitman Authorized Editions were written by, like, teams of ghostwriters, which, in fairness, might be more common now with young adult literature than anyone wants to acknowledge or think about. Also romance novels. Also, like, a lot of dad lit. Like, Ken Follett and, like, James Patterson and dudes like that have, like, teams.
Yeah, my boy Clive is hanging out in his mansion. He's not writing shit.
No, probably not. So, Smilin Jack and the Daredevil Girl Pilot opens thus. A gray, shadowy mist floated between the cabin of the plane and the little red and green lights gleaming on the wingtips. Fog, clouds, and mist. This was the worst weather Smilin Jack Martin had seen in many a hop in his speedy, custom-built cabin ship.
Yep. Amazing start. We've got a setting.
Uh-huh. So Smilin Jack is flying through a bad patch of fog, and he's very lost. And one of the things that I love about this book, I will admit, is that Smilin Jack is kind of a fuck-up. Almost nothing he does seems to work.
Yeah.
He is constantly trying a thing and then failing. And granted, this is partly just because it is a novelization of a comic strip, and so that you can tell that every single plot point needs to be belabored for as long as possible. But for all that he's our protagonist, Smilin Jack, not very good at a lot of things.
Listen, we love our bumbling oaf. we love our sweet f***ing idiot.
And Jack is fumbling around in the fog, and he's out of fuel. And he's gonna die. He's gonna crash land. But suddenly, he hears something coming through his radio. And it's someone going, da-da-da, dee-dee-da, pumpty, dee-dee-day, floogie-woogie, floy-floy.
What the
And it says, now what in the world was the matter with that radio beam? Was the radio gummed up by this soup? Once more came the refrain. Da-da-dee-dee, googie-woogie, floy-floy, floogie.
Ba-ba-dee-da-da-da-dee-do. What do you mean, honey?
It says, of course, it might be an angel. A modern angel, though. And it's a woman singing. Or scatting, more accurately. It is a woman scatting into the radio.
Jack Black's here to save me.
And he says, listen, Miss Floy Floy, get off this wave band with your floogie woogie. I've got things to do to keep from wrapping up my plane.
You run that one by me again? Dramatically, please.
Listen, Miss Floy Floy.
Yeah.
Get off this wave band with your floogie woogie. I've got things to do to keep from wrapping up my plane.
Now this time like you're advertising something?
No. You do not get it a third time.
No.
And she goes, oh my gosh, I was just flying alone in the fog and I wasn't thinking about what I was doing.
Holy fuck.
He accuses her of going joyriding.
What's wrong with that?
Because it's foggy and she's a woman and it's very stupid of her.
Well, we support women's wrongs.
Well, as soon as he finishes upbraiding her, it turns out that she actually knows where she is, unlike him, and knows where he can land, unlike him, and he's going to follow her to safety.
Amazing.
Yeah, because she's not an idiot, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically, when he finally, they come out of the fog together finally, and he can see her, and she's an angel after all. A revelation of a soft, smiling face and glorious hair.
Wow.
Yeah. So she's hot. And she can fly planes.
Mm-hmm. That's also how they described Sauron in the Silmarillion.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That is true.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just thought that might be useful information for our listeners to have as like a good comparison.
You're being very helpful today.
Yeah.
So, this hottie is a crack pilot. She's very good at flying planes. And that's important, even though it is the last time she will fly a plane in this 200-page book.
Is she in all of it?
Yes.
And, okay. Great.
Yeah.
Hey, they say you should go out while you're ahead or something.
Yeah. So, but that's what makes her special. She's a hottie who can fly a plane, and that's crazy.
Wow.
Absolutely insane.
Yeah.
Even though there were a lot of women flying planes in World War II, but that's another thing. So she guides him to safety, and then she jets off. She's gone. And he finds out from the farmer in whose field he landed that her name is Betty Brown. And he's like, I owe her my life.
I feel like you'd want to owe your life to someone with a cooler name.
Yeah, Betty Brown's going to get sort of the short end of the stick. And also, this
Maybe
author...
Mary Sue.
Assuming that Zach Mosley is the one who did the illustrations for this book, since he was the one who drew the comic strip, the way Betty gets illustrated is baffling. Because he appears to only be able to draw women making exactly one facial expression.
Oh, no.
Let me find this. I want you to look at this illustration and then read the caption and then tell me what expression this woman is making.
What? Okay, so we have an illustration of Jack. Jack looks like that one actor from Reno 911 with like a slicked middle part, and he appears to be in a prison jacket, like a striped buttoned prison jacket and pants, and Betty is in like a V-cut shoulder ruffle hourglass dress with just the most dead 1,000-yard stare lip pucker combo I have ever seen. But they made sure to outline her boob very well.
Yeah.
And there's also what appears to be a racist caricature of a small Asian man.
A little unclear what nationality that small man is supposed to be, but he's a very confusing caricature of some kind.
You're a Nazi, Betty gasped. Only a Nazi could be so cruel. The claw shifted uneasily on his feet, glancing anxiously at the head and then at the girl.
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
What does the caption on that picture say?
Betty looked beseechingly at Jack.
That looks like beseeching, doesn't it? Do you feel beseeched?
No. No, I feel confused. Who are the head and the claw?
Okay, so here's what happens. Smilin Jack decides to follow Betty to the West Coast because he needs to properly thank her for having saved his life. This is his big hang-up. It's definitely not that he finds her hot.
Right.
He also has been asked to go to San Francisco for a special secret mission with the U.S. Coast Guard. And when he arrives, he sees Betty take off again. By the way, Betty, I'm pretty sure, is supposed to be flying herself to and from all of these places, including in the illustration that you just saw. So I do not understand why she is wearing a cocktail dress. Anyway. Smilin Jack is immediately arrested for reasons.
Because he's stalking a woman he's never met.
No one cares about that.
Right.
He's immediately arrested.
Of course.
And hijinks ensue, and he is taken to the local head of the FBI, and it turns out that he looks just like a notorious criminal named Powder Pellet.
Oh my fucking God. Also, we have got to give our real criminals cooler names.
Yeah.
But Powder Pete's got it going on.
Powder Pellet.
Yeah, that's what I said.
And so, because he happens to look like Powder Pellet, he's being sent undercover as Powder Pellet. Unfortunately, Powder Pellet is Betty's fiancé.
Oh my fucking God. So, oh boy. Please don't tell me that he gets in between their marriage.
Oh, it gets so much better than that.
Oh.
So Powder Pellet crashed his plane. and the ring of criminals he's been working with don't know that he's been put into custody. And so he's locked up at the hospital. And Smilin Jack, who happens to look like him apparently, enough so that once they dye his hair, Betty genuinely thinks that he is her fiancé. Because she apparently has the object permanence of a toddler.
Incredible. My fiancé is in the hospital. Just kidding, there he is.
There he is.
Hey, sweetie.
I found him.
Holy shit.
They bleach his hair, which he is scandalized by. He also has to pluck his eyebrows, which he's really bummed about. And he has to give himself a grotty little mustache, which he doesn't love. And then he has to burn a symbol into his hand with acid to match the one that Powder has.
Of course.
Of course.
Did they also bleach his butthole like Pulitzer Pete?
You know, they didn't say that, but probably.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Good.
And he spends months mastering Powder's affectations.
Yep. Is Mr. Jack, is he in the military to begin with? Are they just recruiting a random man for this top secret mission?
He's very clearly kind of one of those characters that like Archer is parodying, if that makes sense. He's just a guy.
Just a dude.
He's just a guy.
Okay.
And his whole thing is that he's really, really good at flying planes.
Except when he's not. Which is most of the time.
Yeah.
Great.
Again, he gets to fly a plane twice in this whole book.
And
he spends most of his time on the ground.
Hopelessly lost.
Yeah.
Great.
So he's being sent undercover as Powder to infiltrate the spy ring that Powder has been working with.
Ooh.
Because it is World War II.
Pete's a naughty boy.
And what we are after is a spy ring of fifth columnists. Ooh.
What is a fifth columnist?
So the fifth column is a term that I think sort of reached its ascendancy of popularity in World War II, although it actually predates World War II. And it is a term and concept for a sort of invisible, hidden minority in the country who are working against the war effort. So your secret Nazis and or all of the poor people that they put in Japanese internment camps.
Right.
This book primarily preoccupied with Nazis. We are not going to talk at all, really, about the things that we're doing to our own citizens.
Dope.
Yeah.
Cool.
So, Nazi spies.
Yeah. Yeah, there are definitely lots of those.
So, they put a bunch of effort into preparing Smilin Jack to be powder, and then they send him in undercover, and then he fucks up basically immediately.
Amazing.
It does not last long.
Great job, Jack.
They figure out that he's an imposter, although they don't know who he actually is, but they figure out that he's an imposter, and he's on Betty's yacht. Betty has a yacht, by the way. And we're on Betty's yacht, and she is told he's a spy, and he thinks that Betty is also a spy, and it's definitely not confusing and very linear storytelling. And then he winds up in a prison camp.
Great. Nice. Very cool. Prison camps are only places that protagonists escape.
Correct.
They don't exist for any other purpose.
And this, I do think that this is very interesting. The way that they set this whole thing up is he is in a prison camp working a sulfur mine that is on an island in the South Sea. And the whole thing is that there are prisoners being sent there legitimately by a South American government, but also there are people just being straight up yoinked by the people running it who are like shanghaiing people to put them in this prison camp. And it's something...
What the fuck?
There's some kind of hand-waving thing where it's like they're working, like all of these men in this prison camp are constantly dying because they're worked to death in these sulfur mines. And it's okay for a certain number of them to die, but they can't have too many of them die. And so they just kidnap people to make up the numbers?
Amazing.
Unclear.
Beautiful storytelling. Great job, 17 ghostwriters.
What we come to find out is that Betty's father owns an airline company, and Betty is, of course, innocent. We spend a little bit of time being like, oh no, Betty's a spy, but Betty has done nothing wrong. Betty's father has also done nothing wrong because American titans of industry are always good people.
That's right. Capitalists are good.
With their country's best interests at heart.
Interpol.
But a scheming, devious middle manager type has been doing espionage with her father's company's resources right under her nose.
Wow.
And that's the one called the head.
The real enemy is red tape.
The real enemy is mid-level executives who
right.
are answerable to no one.
That's actually true.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So the head, which is that's what he's called. Everyone calls him the head. And his henchman is called the Claw.
Amazing.
Do you want to guess why he's called the Claw?
Because he's got a claw.
Uh-huh.
Holy shit.
The Claw is instrumental in sending Smilin Jack away to this prison. And at some point, the Claw is asked to lock Betty up, also in the prison. And the Claw he can't bring himself to do it. Because, you see, he's a gentleman, and he don't hoit no dames.
Come on, dude.
And when he refuses to follow the orders of the head, they take his claw away, and they put him in the prison, too.
Enjoy your nub, you f***ing idiot.
Well, and so there's this whole, like, dime store psychology story arc where Jack wants the Claw to be his ally and to help him break out. And he realizes that the Claw has had his sense of self shattered by having his claw taken away. And so he figures out how to make him a new one.
Oh my God.
And earns his, like, undying loyalty by making him feel like a man again.
Amazing. Amazing.
Which is, in a weird way, still better disability representation than some shit I've seen
Yeah.
made since then.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Like, this is a very bad book.
God, I love it. That was obviously the like Sunday morning comic strip of like, all right, we gotta teach kids what to do when their friend gets something taken away from them. And it made its way into a novel.
Let's see. Other highlights. He almost escapes like 3 times.
How long is he in this prison camp?
Like the second 2/3 of the book, I would say. It mostly happens in the prison.
What?
It very quickly turns from Archer to like The Great Escape.
Okay. I mean, why didn't they just call it Prison Break?
And I think we'll talk a little bit more about the sort of bits and bobs that I find genuinely interesting about this as sort of an artifact rather than an actual work of fiction. But there's a whole subplot with a generic quote-unquote native man
Oh boy.
named Fat Stuff,
Cool.
who is I will say, they specify that he is an islander from the South Seas, which is more specific than I thought they would get. However, he inexplicably speaks in the weird, made-up, like, borderline pidgin that... Have you ever seen the original Peter Pan, like the animated one?
Yeah.
You know the way that the Indian characters talk in that movie specifically?
No, but somebody will.
Yeah, he talks that way, and it's such a weird... I've never understood where that faux dialect came from. I don't really feel like anyone ever actually spoke that way.
Huh.
But I'm also guessing, like, that was a weird stereotype about indigenous people in the continental United States.
Yeah, not Pacific Islanders.
Don't see what that has to do with the Pacific Islanders.
Oh my God. That's... It wasn't enough to just make him a bad stereotype. They had to mix up their bad stereotypes.
And that was the thing. Like the sensation
such
of reading it is just like...
incredible lack of respect.
You're like, at least get your bad stereotypes correct? Question mark?
Yeah.
I don't... It's very racist.
Jesus.
And I want to be clear. No one needs to go pick up this book. Don't do it. I mean, it's very funny. But, like, you don't need to... No one needs to read it. It is an artifact of a time that we left behind, and thank God.
Find a PDF online, laugh at it for 5 minutes, and then never think about it again.
But at least he's, like, a good guy.
Mm-hmm.
He's a good character who is shown to be, like, thoughtful, kind, just, like, an all-around sweetie.
Yeah.
It feels a little bit like the team of ghostwriters had at least 2 people in it who were like, what are we doing here, man? What is happening?
Oh, I would die for Fat Stuff.
Honestly, it's probably worth noting that the Whitman company that put out the Whitman authorized editions was headquartered in Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
So, not a lot of familiar with the South Sea Islands, I should think.
I don't know. I've heard people call Wisconsin Little Samoa.
You're right. How could I have forgotten that?
Yeah, obviously.
Notoriously balmy.
There's an old land bridge that connected them briefly in 10,000 BC.
That connected Wisconsin with the Samoan Islands?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. You learn something new every day.
You do.
So Jack gets imprisoned, and it turns out that a lot of the people in this prison were people that Powder literally shanghaied, like drugged in bars and kidnapped to put in this sulfur mine prison.
Cool.
They are justifiably very upset with him because they think he is Powder.
Right.
But with grit and determination,
Uh-huh.
he manages to lead a very successful escape attempt
Okay.
that lasts for an embarrassingly long time in terms of the pacing of the story, only for them to all wind up back in prison again.
Hell yeah, dude. Nice bootstraps, boy.
But finally, eventually, he manages to... All right, this is the final scheme that gets them out.
Amazing.
Are you ready?
Yep.
Okay. He manages to steal a lighter, a metal lighter, from the sadistic guard that he's had problems with this whole time, whose name was...
The Glove. The Puppet.
Everyone in this book is named like Slab and Lizard.
Oh, yeah, that's my boy Couch over there.
Limehouse. What the fuck? Limehouse, the sadistic guard.
This is the kind of shit we gotta go back to, man. I'm a return guy, but only for the dumbest names I've ever heard.
All right. So, Limehouse goes to taunt Jack in his cell after he's been put in the solitary dungeon for his first or third or whatever escape attempt, which he manages to, in his second escape, he manages to steal a plane at some point and then just loses it immediately by trying to land it in water and hitting a reef. Like, nothing else happens. He just lands the plane badly and it sinks.
Great.
Anyway.
Best pilot in the world.
Every time he gets in a plane, something goes horribly wrong. So, Limehouse comes down to the solitary dungeons and tries to smoke a cigarette in front of Jack because none of the men are allowed to have cigarettes, and he knows it'll stress them out if he smokes one in front of them. But his lighter doesn't work, and it embarrasses him, and so he throws it on the ground. And Jack manages to tie his pants and shirt together and throw them through the bars to pull the lighter into the dungeon. And then he flattens it out and grinds it into a key. I really wish I could describe the level of exasperation on your face right now. It gets better.
I'm so done with this shit, man. What the
Okay. He grinds it into a key. And they didn't want to make it seem too easy because specifically he grinds it into a key, and at first it'll open the door, but he actually has to like finesse it before it'll lock the door as well as unlock the door.
Right, of course.
And then he sneaks out at night, and he goes to the house that Limehouse lives in with his wife and daughter, and he steals all of Limehouse's daughter's silk dresses. Okay?
Uh-huh.
And he stashes all those, and he puts himself back in his little cage, and then the next night he sneaks back out, and he finds a bunch of bamboo. Okay?
Uh-huh.
And he stashes that, and he puts himself back in his little cage, and then he takes the bamboo and the silk dresses and he sews them into a glider.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yep.
Hang on, I have a picture for you.
He sets off on his glider, immediately crashing it into a reef and being eaten by a shark. What?
What doesn't make sense about that image?
Yeah, no, of course not.
Would you like to try and describe it for the listeners?
Jack, now shirtless,
Yes.
still with his hands behind his back,
Uh-huh.
is standing behind what appears to be like Orville Wright's first flying machine.
Yeah.
Overlooking a cliff.
It's a glider, and he's got the glider on the cliff.
Uh-huh.
But before he can take off, because he's waiting for an American plane that he's seen going overhead on patrols, Limehouse shows up, and they fight to the death, and it takes way too long because all of the fighting is described in painful detail. Hang on, let me see. It's time for a dramatic reading. I realize we've not done a lot of reading.
Hell yeah, let's go.
Let's see. The club was poised for a blow, but as Limehouse spoke, he forgot for a second to keep the pistol aimed. This was the chance Jack waited for. He dived at the prison guard, desperation propelling him with such speed that he was upon the surprised prison official before Limehouse could fire.
Surprised prison official.
Limehouse squeezed the trigger, but the bullets whistled widely wide of their mark as Jack drove his fists into the guard's body with punishing force.
Whistled widely wide. Hell yeah.
Limehouse rocked back on his heels. He dropped the club as he strove to maintain his balance. Jack caught the wrist of the gun hand, giving it a wrench. Howling with pain, Limehouse's fingers released their grip on the pistol.
Tom and Jerry style.
It's a lot, like, they describe each individual punch all the way through.
And then they kiss.
Unfortunately, no. He throws Limehouse down a crevice instead.
And then dives after him.
All
and
right.
They share a passionate embrace.
No, again, that's not what happens.
Their tongues.
I tell you, this fist fight goes on for like 6 pages and bridges 2 chapters.
Yeah, it's all build up for the most passionate kiss of all.
And finally, he takes off in his glider.
And they live happily ever after.
And immediately almost dies. So one of the things I found out when I was reading about this is that the guy who wrote these comics was actually very into planes. He had a pilot's license. He spent a lot of time flying. And it apparently showed in the comic strip. Like, he would put, like, little explanations of what was happening in, like, the... he, like, footnoted the cartoon.
What a dork.
Yeah. And so there's a whole, like... He takes off in his glider, but the center of gravity is wrong, and he has to, like, maneuver his body to get the glider to level out correctly. And he ultimately intercepts the American plane. They pick him up. Then there's an actual plane fight.
Why? What possible reason could there be for a plane fight?
Because the bad guys also have planes.
What bad guys?
The bad guys who run the prison. Who are running the spy ring. It's the Nazi spy ring.
Right, of course. How could I forget?
And their whole goal is to steal an American bomber and sell it to the Nazis.
Yeah, one bomber would make all the difference.
Yes.
Obviously.
Well, it's one of the new bombers with special technology in it the Nazis couldn't dream of.
Right, of course.
Yeah. So there's a big gunfight. He shoots the head out of the sky. Who's in a little plane.
Sorry, head.
Blows him right up. And they rescue Fat Stuff.
Let's go.
They rescue Betty. Betty's father realizes that he's been had by all of these secret Nazis who were in his employ.
Of course.
And they've saved everything. And there's a running bit that I did think was an interesting artifact of this being specifically a wartime book, where as part of all of the rigmarole while he's in this prison camp thing, they are trying to get him to lure a second American bomber to this island so that they can steal it. And they say that if he doesn't, they will put Betty also in a prison camp. But if he does it, they'll let her go. And he and Betty have this whole scene where he's like, I wish I could spare her, but if I help the Nazis, then thousands of girls like Betty all over America will suffer. And she's like, I wouldn't want you to, and I wouldn't respect you if you did, because it's the American war effort.
Jesus.
And so, I'll read you the thrilling ending. They make it out. They get back to California, and it says, Jack grinned and took Betty by the arm. Did you ever see a South Sea island by moonlight? He asked. Why, of course, Jack, Betty said. Jack looked blankly at Betty and said, Shucks, I thought I could show you something new. And she says, Oh, but it's something I never get tired of. I love to watch it from my plane when I'm flying at night. If there was ever a Daredevil Girl Pilot, Jack said enthusiastically, you're one in a million. But in the back of Smilin Jack's mind, there was the pressing thought that moonlight romance was not for him. Back in San Diego, another assignment was waiting, and he yearned to learn what it might be.
And then Limehouse appeared, and they smooched.
So, again, this is not literature, but I do find it to be an interesting little sort of time capsule, both in terms of the war effort and more broadly what young adult fiction was kind of like in this era and like what it was attempting to accomplish.
No matter what year it is, you can make money churning out absolute garbage to young people as long as you fill it with enough propaganda.
Yes. But there are parts of this that I found kind of charming. It was not quite what I expected it to be. It's very interesting how it sort of was attempting to toe the line of being, daring and adventurous and trying to make allowances for, there's, again, like 2/3 of the plot is him in this prison camp. And there's all of these interesting little asides about like how people, like the way that men react to being made powerless, and like how certain people can only be pushed so far before they push back, even if it is to their own ultimate detriment, and like these kinds of things. And the fact that Smilin Jack is constantly not succeeding at the things he's attempting to do, if you think about it as being aimed just as much at little boys whose fathers were serving as it is at little boys that they are hoping will eventually become the soldiers of tomorrow. I don't know. I think it's very interesting if you sort of look at it from the perspective of making children feel like their own parents, specifically their own fathers who are serving, have a level of like hope and agency in what they're doing. It's a lot more palatable to think of your dad doing things if you have this kind of sanitized, endearing parallel being produced for you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's a little better than like The Jungle, probably.
Mm-hmm.
That being, sorry, kid, your dad's in the meat grinder.
Yeah. Yes. But, if you think about it from the perspective of a child whose father is serving abroad, and you can be like, well, okay, like, you don't know exactly what your dad is doing, but Smilin Jack Flash, or I keep wanting to call him Jack Flash. It's just Smilin Jack.
Flash Gordon.
Smilin Jack Flash Gordon.
Smilin Jack Flash Gordon.
His plane goes down, and he becomes what amounts to a prisoner of war, and he's in an internment camp, and he ultimately makes it out, but it takes a really long time, and it's very complicated, and it's not the kind of thing you can do easily, and yeah.
I do love introducing children to the enemies to lovers trope with Jack Flash Gordon and Lemon Home. That's really important to me. When they smooch at the end and live happily ever after, it's nice to have a happy ending,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you have any final thoughts on this story specifically before I talk a little bit about the Whitman authorized editions in a general sense?
God, no. I don't ever want to think about that again.
You didn't love your time with Smilin Jack and the Daredevil Girl Pilot?
No.
Why not? It was an electric romp with a classy dame.
That's what they say about me. You gotta...
Uh-huh. So, in the back of this book, there is an ad for the other Whitman authorized editions. And I would like you to
oh yeah?
Maybe read a few of these titles for our listeners.
Alrighty. The Whitman authorized editions. New stories of adventure and mystery. Dick Tracy, Ace Detective. Blondie and Dagwood's Adventure in Magic. Joyce and the Secret Squadron, a Captain Midnight adventure. Bonita Granville and the Mystery of Star Island. Judy Garland and... What?
Okay. So I was waiting for you to find a name you recognized. Read the title.
Judy Garland and the Hoodoo Costume?
Uh-huh.
That's just an actress's name and something racist.
Yeah, a couple of them are about Shirley Temple.
Oh my god, yep.
Okay.
Shirley Temple and Roy Rogers and...
So here's the thing. And this is a fascinating bit of sort of fandom. The Whitman authorized editions were primarily novels that used famous actors and actresses as their protagonists.
It's kind of cool.
But they weren't about, and like they were like Nancy Drew-esque mysteries, and they would just slam a real famous person in as the protagonist, but not as themselves, but as themselves, but not as themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be like Judy Garland is Judy Garland, but she's not an actress, and now she's solving a mystery. And these were done probably without the knowledge of the actual actors and actresses.
Oh,
because
cool.
you have to remember this was the studio system.
Right.
And so the studio authorized
No
it
royalties for you.
but the actual people might not have had any input at all. Although I did find an article about there was one batch about one particular starlet that was written by her mother. It's a little confusing. And I find that really, really interesting as a sort of precursor to our current fandom culture, because it's fan fiction, basically.
Mm-hmm.
It is fan fiction being put out by an actual publisher.
Yeah, it's fan fiction, except it's commercialized, mass-produced garbage.
Yes, and if you had asked me, I would never have guessed that style of story went back that far. It's just like, it's a famous person you're obsessed with in a story that has nothing to do with anything.
I don't know if I like. I mean, I see what you're saying. But fanfic to me is like such a grassroots thing.
Well, right, and that's what I would never have thought, that it has a precursor that goes back this far. You know what I mean?
Yeah. New episode idea for you. How far back does it go? Was there like there's got to have been, Shakespearean fan fiction.
Maybe. Yeah.
You got to find out.
I will.
Hell yeah.
Well, but what, fan fiction about Shakespeare himself?
Sure.
Yeah. Because that's what the interesting thing about it to me is, that it's not that they're recycling fictional characters. We've always done that.
Yeah.
It is that they are inserting real human beings, real actual human beings, into these fictional narratives as if they are characters.
Yeah. Like Macbeth.
Which is weird and like a little unsettling, probably. But most of them, especially the majority of the ones about actors and actresses, came out during World War II and were kind of expressly aimed at helping children wrap their heads around. Almost all of them have something in them somewhere about, like, the war effort. Shirley Temple's a switchboard operator in New York, so she can connect important calls for the war effort.
Everything is fine. You love being a cog in the machine.
So yeah.
Love it.
It's a big weird world out there, and we have done some really interesting things through the years in the name of giving children something wholesome to read. Quote unquote wholesome.
Have you seen the like Call of Duty looking Marines ad?
Oh, yeah.
I get it on Twitch all the time, and it is just, there's nothing new.
I think this is better than that, I'm not gonna lie.
Smilin Jack does beat the, do you like to game? Join the Marines.
At least Smilin Jack almost dies like 8 times.
Yeah.
Smilin Jack spends the whole book just getting the absolute shit kicked out of him. And this is one of the last things I'll say. It's very, very interesting. Like I said, 2/3 of it takes place in this work camp where they are being worked to death. And the book is at great pains to be like, this is a horrific thing that no one should have to endure. But like at the end when it's very clearly they're trying to help children sort of wrap their heads around the idea that someone is doing these very horrible things, right? Like that there are people out there who will put people in camps and work them to death, right? But they also can't go too overboard because they might wind up indicting the actual American prison system. So they have to do like a little bit of a tap dance, which winds up looking like a lot of, no one should have to suffer this way. that is correct. But when they liberate everyone at the end, the real criminals who should have been there get transferred to a better, more humane prison where they belong because they're criminals. Uh-huh. It's a little awkward.
Yeah, that's whatever. It's a children's book. Moral.
Yeah.
Moral. Yeah,
I don't know. It's interesting. I bring it up only because it's interesting kind of watching them grappling with all of that in real time in 1942 for an audience of children. Like, you can see them kind of already culturally being like, okay, how do we...
They can't even get that shit straight.
Like, how do we...
Hey, we can't square these things ethically. What do we tell these kids?
Yeah. You know, which is always a problem we've had.
Yeah.
How do you square your country's very real crimes with the crimes that you are allegedly trying to keep other people from committing?
Daddy, are we the baddies?
So yeah, very silly book. I don't know. Everyone out there, send me your favorite weird wartime propaganda for children.
Mm-hmm.
Were there, like, children's books about the invasion of Iraq and Afghanistan? Or have we just stopped bothering?
Harry Potter and the Desert Storm.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it's out there.
I mean, I guess that's... One of the things that did surprise me about this was kind of how grounded it really was. Like, the only thing in it that was wildly unbelievable were, like, some of the logistics and the fact that Smilin Jack didn't just die, like, 4 or 5 times. But that doesn't make it any more outlandish than your average, like, Bruce Willis action film.
Yeah.
It did make me realize... Well, it did make me wonder if part of the reason that young adult fiction has skewed more and more fantastical is that the world that we are trying to square is increasingly untenable. Like, it is increasingly impossible to write fiction for children that is set in anything resembling the world we live in.
No, you don't get it. Daddy was torturing an evil troll in the CIA black site.
God. Yeah. It's just like, you know what? Have a book about a little British kid being a dick at boarding school, but also they do magic.
Oh my God. Just some ghostwriter team. So let me set the scene. There's 17 of them all scrabbling around this desk, writing frantically. Some guy walks in a suit, slaps down a big stack of paperwork, and goes, "We gotta whitewash Abu Ghraib."
Oh no!
And they all just walk out. That's my parting thought for you.
Yeah, thank you. That's good. Yeah, I don't know. I do wonder if it is increasingly difficult to tell stories with that kind of black and white thinking without setting it in a fictional world.
I think the last time we as a culture could have done that was the literal Nazis.
Yep.
The Nazis are black and white.
Yep. Just like, so now everything has to be, set in a kingdom where the bad guys are bad because they're just bad.
Uh-huh.
They're bad guys.
Yeah.
Who do bad things.
Yes.
They do the bad magic.
We're different because we do good things.
Yes. Inherently.
Uh-huh. Listen, if there's one thing that I learned from Dune, it's that dudes named Paul are just absolutely inherently correct, and all who oppose them are ontologically evil.
Yep, that's definitely the takeaway of that series.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
White boys named Paul. I salute you.
It's important to remember to read the first Dune book and just stop right there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, dude rules.
Don't let anything change your opinion.
Yeah, I mean, what a cool guy. What a guy to look up to.
What a
great role model for our children.
I'm gonna name all of my children after him. All right. This was silly. Happy New Year. We'll be back next week with slightly more hard-hitting literary analysis. And to play us out, I'm going to have William read a passage at random from Smilin Jack and the Daredevil Girl Pilot.
Limehouse directed them toward a large central building, and the two men were taken through a corridor to a large office where a light was burning. We'll see the commandant now. No, Limehouse. We'll see the commandant now, Limehouse said. Then I'll be sure of getting full credit for you two. Guards seized Jack roughly and, paying no attention to his wound, fingerprinted him and then thrust him stumbling into a room where a bald, foreign-looking man in uniform sat at a desk.
Keep going.
That's the head.
Yeah.
We've found the racist caricature. Limehouse, with a self-satisfied grin on his ugly face, was standing nearby. This is the new one, sir, Limehouse explained. Maybe you recognize our old friend and former helper, Powder Pellet. What's the other guy's voice?
I don't know.
Ah, so it is. And Jack, you're making a serious mistake, Jack said. As a matter of fact, I am not Powder Pellet. If you will communicate with the nearest United States consulate, I can quickly establish my identity. My name is not Pellet. I am Smilin Jack Martin, an American aviator. Ha ha! Limehouse laughed. You're surely smarter than that, Powder. Oh my God.
All right.
Okay.
Welcome to 2025, my loves.
Woohoo!
Thank you all so much for being here. William, thank you for joining me.
My sincere pleasure.
And we'll be back next week. And as always, if you can, this week, this month, this pay period, consider supporting a living author instead of a propagandist, because they could really use the love. Bye.
Bye.
Didn't Read It was created, written, researched, and recorded by me, Grace Todd. Maddie Wood is our co-producer and social media maven. Editing by Tally, a true podcasting professional, and Grace Todd. Our theme song is Books 2.0, written, performed, and recorded by William Albritton. Special thanks to Black Iris Social Club in Richmond, Virginia. Reach out to us with questions, concerns, or academic scrutiny at didntreaditpod@gmail.com.